Hello everyone, this is video number 3 in our series, and I'm going to do a couple of things in it. First of all, I'm going to run through the questions that were raised in connection with the text by Wingell and Herzog on outlining. Everybody did well on the 8 questions that I posed. I'll just review them though, and thanks also for getting your work in on time. That really is an enormous help. So let me just run through the questions. Question 1, what do the authors Wingell and Herzog identify as the primary quality of a successful outline? And the answer was coherence. Question 2, the authors identified 3 possible arguments that an author might mistakenly seek to combine with regard to Wagner's music dramas. What are they? And they were, first of all, tonality and chromatic harmony. Secondarily, the role of anti-Semitism in Wagner's work, and thirdly, the ring cycle as a 19th century German mythical archetype. So everyone had a version of that, I think, and that's fine. Question 3. What's the necessary condition that underpins coherence as Wingell and Herzog see it? And the answer is order. Question 4. They say that headings and subheadings determine which quality that an outline should have. And the answer there was a technical layout. So maybe some people slightly missed that, but it was the technical layout. Question 5. Do Wingell and Herzog prefer sentence outlines or topic outlines? They certainly prefer sentence outlines. Question 6. Which 2 principal weaknesses do Wingell and Herzog identify when they're looking through the first version of the outline relating to Bach's 6 Suites for solo cello? They say that there's no real thesis there, and also the outline doesn't do well because it relies on topics rather than on sentences. Question 7. Wingell and Herzog suggest that ultimately that outline also lacks coherence. And which 3 sections do they regard as particularly irrelevant? And those were sections 1, 2, and 4, dealing with a broad survey of the Baroque era. Doesn't really need to be there. Section 2, I think, dealt with Bach's biography. Again, not really relevant. And then thirdly, a whole history in section 4 of string instruments. Just far too big, far too vague, and not really helping to focus in on the repertoire. Then last question, question 8. In their edited revision, Wingell and Herzog achieve a coherent reorganization of this initial draft by introducing a sequence of 3 main sections, and each of those subdivided into sentence length subtopics. So which 4 subtopics are included in section 2? Section A dealt with intent and style. Section B dealt with the nature of the instrument that Bach wrote for. Section C dealt with the dance suite genre. And Section D dealt with performance practice as it relates to articulation and to tempo. So these are all issues really that are going to be relevant to think about when we come to comparing recordings of your chosen piece by Beethoven. So I thought that was useful just to draw a bit of attention to that, because I think it's helpful to keep in mind when we move towards the second submission. To get there then, we're going to do some practical things as well as some field-related things, but what I want to do now is to think about chapters 7 from Turabian 2018, and you'll know what that looks like. Here it is. Hope everyone's got their copy by now. So we're going to look at chapter 7 called Drafting Your Paper, pages 75 to 79, and also a little bit of chapter 9, Revising Your Draft. That's pages 102 to 5. So I'll give those page runs in the email that goes with this video. So I'll begin straight away, and I'll start working through chapter 7 and then go to chapter 9. Overall, 8 questions again, so 8 questions in total. So we begin on page 75 of chapter 7, and Turabian recommends that the draft stage follows things like storyboarding and outlining. So storyboarding, just some ideas that we might put down in a very sort of sketchy outline plan dealing with topics, and then outlining, well, we know what that is because we've looked through it, guided by Wingell and Herzog. They say that drafting is really an act of targeted discovery where we find out about our ideas rather than an open-ended exploration. They say that drafting is likely to open up new lines of thought and hence not merely be a linear extension of prior stages. Turabian goes on to say that drafting may show accumulation at a sort of fairly slow pace, or perhaps it may involve more rapid sketching that will require substantial revision, and that everyone will have their own preferred approach. Some people will work slowly and like to do that, others will want to get their ideas down quickly and then think about them and put more polish on them later. So here's question 1. Given this thought, does Turabian recommend producing a complete draft or working in a series of shorter goal-directed spans? So, does Turabian recommend producing a complete draft altogether or working in a series of shorter goal-directed spans? Question 2. Turabian advocates 3 points for reviewing in the course of drafting. And what are they? So, Turabian advocates 3 points for review in the course of producing a draft. What are they? Turabian reinforces the value of using a full sentence outline, so we've seen that in Wingal and Herzog, to help keep the writing process on track, but also to note which key terms support them. So this is the storyboard idea, now linked to the more complete outline as we bring it into a running prose draft. Question 3. When incorporating our sources, and obviously you all have plenty of those on hand now, relating to your piece by Beethoven, Turabian advises distinguishing between 3 modes of integration. What are they? So Turabian advises distinguishing among 3 modes of integration. What are they? Turabian says that sources need to be cited appropriately. When using a quotation of 4 lines or fewer, it should be run into the text. Question 4. How should a quotation of 5 or more lines be presented? Question 4. How should a quotation of 5 or more lines be presented? So how should a quotation of 5 or more lines be presented? Question 5. Turabian gives examples of text links that make the insertion of a quotation work smoothly. So we have our own prose and we want to put in a quotation and we need a text link. So they give several examples there. So that's Turabian and the support authors. But should the author of the paper, that's everyone here, be identified by their professional titles? And must their full name be given on every occasion? So we want to make reference to a source. Should the author of that source be identified by their professional title, and must their full name be given on every occasion? Okay, I'll move to chapter 9. So this is picking up now on page 102. Turabian provides several practical steps to take when evaluating a draft, suggesting that we should employ a reader's perspective and that we should revise from whole to part, but begin with the introduction and the conclusion. So in other words, not get lost in trying to rework a particular section, but think about the whole thing, but begin with the introduction and then move to the conclusion. That we should also work from hard copy rather than try to edit on the screen. And I would say that's very important. You see far more when you have something on the page than when you work on the screen. That's just a fact, and experience teaches you that. Turabian also says that the opening of both introduction and conclusion should be clearly apparent. So it should be obvious where your introduction begins and also where your conclusion begins. They also, that is the sort of author group that's sort of behind Turabian, say that the text should be checked throughout for blind spots. That is, points where the argument seems to lose its way a little bit and it's not entirely clear how we get from one idea to another idea. So I have 3 questions to finish, and this is about chapter 9. So here's the first. Question 6. When addressing the question of coherence, previously raised by Wingell and Herzog, Turabian identifies 6 points to consider. What are they? What 6 points does Turabian believe that support the idea of coherence? Question 7. Does Turabian recommend organising paragraphs so that they are of identical length? We're arranging our prose in paragraphs, so question 7 says, does Turabian recommend organising them so that they are of identical length? Last question, question 8. Should the revised draft, once we've finished it, be corrected immediately? Should we put the final full stop in, the final period point, and then immediately go back and draft? Is that what Turabian recommends? Should we revise draft, in other words, to correct it immediately after we've completed it? Okay, I will end the video here and I will upload it. I hope the link works this time. It should work. Sometimes it might need to be pasted into your own browser rather than trying to launch it from the email. I suspect the university system may not allow that there may be a firewall built in that none of us can see. I will also include the title of this video in the email so that you'll be able to search it once you're into YouTube. You should be able to just enter that and look for it by using the title, but the link will be the most efficient way. Because I say, don't necessarily try to just launch it from the email. I suspect the university servers prevent us from being able to do that. Okay. So I will forward this email, and if you can send me something, send me your answers by Monday, that would be great, and then I'll be uploading another video which will take us through the final stage of revision. All right, thanks very much, goodbye. I will be in touch again soon, and I'll look forward to getting some responses from you by the beginning of next week. Bye for now.